Welcome back to another Fantasy Hockey 101 with the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and class is in session. Today we're going to be talking about streamer value. So let's go ahead and start with the basics here. What is a streamer? A streamer is typically a player that you may not want to hold on long term, but somebody that can give you short-term value in a good week. So a good example would be, we've been talking about Anthony Duclair a lot, right? And it's all because Ottawa plays a lot of off nights, which means you're not going to have to bench players on these nights. There's probably only like 2 or 3 games, and it means that you'll be able to activate more of your players throughout the week, and that's what you're looking for in streamers usually. Another reason to stream players could be you could be chasing hot hands. You could be going after Tony DeAngelo and Capo Caco right now, and Jacob Vrana and all these guys, hoping that they stay hot. But for the most part, when GMs are talking about streamers, they're talking about players that you're going to pick up for a short term because of scheduling, typically, to add starts. And one of the easiest ways in both points and Cats leagues, this doesn't really apply to Roto. It kind of does, but not really. In points and Cats leagues, one of the easiest ways to win a week is by volume. And the way you get volume is using streamers. So streamers, guys that you add for short-term value on good weeks. I think what we're going to do here, I'm going to take this in a few parts. First, we're going to look at the schedule and kind of determine what teams give you good streamer value. The upcoming weeks are actually really difficult for this, so we'll go through the next 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll go into my actual teams and explain how I would utilize streamers in my actual teams and how they can give you value. Also, to talk about just briefly, in points league, streamers are much more straightforward. You don't need to worry about what your opponent's doing. You can just pick up the best available option for you that week. In a Cats league, you need to be looking at what you need to beat your opponent. So you should be doing research on your opponent's team to see where they're strong and where they're weak, and where you need to kind of bulk up for the week. And we'll be talking about both. So let's start with looking at the schedule here. All right, so this is the week of November the 18th, which is today. So what we'd be doing on this week. As you can see, there's not a lot in the way of off-night games in general. So we've got Tuesday, there are 13 total games on Thursday, and 14 total games on Saturday. So these are just really, really tough weeks. Odds are most of you are going to be benching players on these weeks, and it's going to be a matter of trying to figure out how you can get the most out of your roster. So if you look at Washington, right? Washington is the only team that plays Monday and Wednesday. So what this means is if you pick up a player from the Capitals, let's say you drop somebody from any one of these teams that plays these 3 nights, which is most teams, right? Let's say you drop... let's not go so easy with Danton Heinen. Let's say you have Pavelski or Ben. I think these are a couple guys that you could be considering dropping. I'm not necessarily saying they're your worst player, but let's assume they are. If you were to drop a player from Dallas, or Rope Hintz for that matter, you would be almost certainly not losing any starts because these nights are so heavy that even if you drop a player, you are going to be benching him anyway. So if you were to drop a player from Dallas and add somebody from the Capitals, you've automatically gained 2 starts that you just straight up didn't have previously. So that's kind of the whole goal here. It's all about adding starts. If you really wanted to get granular with it, if you only had 1 streamer spot and you were willing to use all 4 pickup options, assuming you have 4 per week, on that 1 spot, you could grab a guy from Arizona or any of these 4 teams that are playing on Monday. So maybe you like Dvorak or Schmaltz, or you like Silverberg or Henrique, or one of these guys. And then move again on Wednesday to maybe Tatar if he's available, or Drouin or Deneau, who's been good lately. Or maybe over here you could get Lemieux if you need Pims. So that you have a lot of options. You could switch every single off night to a new streamer if you wanted to, if you needed to. If you have 2 streaming spots, which a good amount of teams will have 2 streaming spots, you could grab a guy from the Capitals to get these 2 nights, and then that's 1 ad. Do another ad on one of these teams, whether that's LA, Arizona, or Anaheim, and then switch to a team here So then you'd have 3 total ads, one here on Monday, and then one on Wednesday, and then one that is a capital player Monday and Wednesday. So you're adding starts all over the place with 2 streamer spots. Now, I think the biggest question is not necessarily the value of a streamer spot, but how do you find your streamer spot? So I'm going to go right into my team right now. This is kind of our most competitive league. It's the one that I pay the most attention to. I want to win the most. And to try to evaluate who my streamer is, you're looking at your least valuable player that also doesn't have a good schedule. So the player that probably jumps out to everybody, if you're looking at this list, and if you're listening to the podcast, I'll try to be as verbose as I can about what I'm talking about. But this is going to be easier on YouTube just because for what you're seeing here. But on my team, I think the obvious streamer spots are probably Jacob Chikrin. This is a blocks league, so Polak has a little bit more value. Chikrin and Duclair, probably. So Duclair, I would argue, actually is not the right person to stream out this week because he actually does play the Wednesday and Friday off nights. So he only has one heavy game night, which he's going to be benched for, but not the biggest deal. And then Chikrin actually also plays 2 off nights. He plays Monday and Sunday, avoiding Tuesday. So both of those guys, despite the fact they look like my worst and are my worst players, are probably not the streamer option. In fact, the 2 options that stick out are actually Tatar to me, possibly, despite the fact he's been very good lately. He does have 1 off night, but that's it. And one of my goalies. So my goalies are Andrei Vasilevsky, Semyon Varlamov, and Robin Lehner. And they all play the exact same nights. And Varlamov and Lehner both alternate starts, but they're starting on the same nights because Crawford started on Sunday and Greiss started on Saturday, which were their last games. So most likely we're going to have Varlamov and Lehner start Monday and Friday, or Tuesday and Saturday this week. And then Vasilevsky being a starter is going to start most of the games regardless. So I'd probably have to decide between one of these 2, Varlamov or Lehner, as my kind of drop candidate to stream if I wanted to maximize my starts this week, which does make things challenging because, and this is the whole problem about how you find your streamer spot is you don't want to give these guys up. But let's look through my my actual schedule here. I'm already on Sunday because I was just... So on Tuesday, I'm currently benching Duclair, which we already discussed. That's fine. And also one of Lehner or Varlamov. I don't know yet. Then we look at Wednesday, not an off night, so I'm not benching anybody. Thursday, I actually don't have anybody on my bench except for probably Lehner because he's playing against Tampa. Friday, another not off night. And then Saturday is a night where I will be benching again. It looks like Ehlers is on the bench right now, but actually Chikrin is probably the better option. So Chikrin on the bench, not that big a deal. He's playing on Sunday, so no need to stream him out. Lehner is actually a decent start, but so is everybody else. We've got Vasilevsky against Anaheim. Varlamov is probably playing against San Jose, and Lehner against Dallas. So again, Lehner seems like a possible streaming option despite how well he's playing. I could just hang on here and see what happens with this matchup. I'm currently ahead in starts. I believe we both set our lines, so I don't really need to maximize, but at the same time, I am hamstringing myself slightly. If I were to be willing to just drop Lehner right now, and this is a league where we have to add the next day, so I should have done this last night if I was going to do it. I could have dropped Lehner and added somebody like Lars Eller or Jeff Carter and done the streaming we already talked about. And that probably would have been the best option for me. It's just a matter of being willing to let go of one of my goalies. This is a 4-start minimum league as well, so having that third goalie, I typically don't like having 3 goalies in an averages league, but I've had some trouble with goalies so far because of Varlamov playing every other. So that's what's going on in this league. Let's look at one of the leagues where Gamby and I actually are together on it. This is a Twitter league with some of the other podcasts out there, and this league is much more kind of obvious as far as the fact that we probably need to stream. On Monday, again, not an off night, so not a big deal. Tuesday's a problem. We're benching 4 players right now. And as far as isolating my streamers, this is a Bangers Cats league. So you can see that it's goals, assists, PIMs, shots on goal, power play points, hits, and blocks. Well, The obvious standouts for drop candidates are the guys on the bench right now. Neil Pionk, Derick England, Ryan Reeves, Milan Lucic, and then also we've got Calvin DeHaan up here, who's a possibility. And that's probably it. Our goalies, we don't have an extra goalie, so there's no real streamer option there. Although having one, in certain leagues, only running one goalie is not a bad idea. I'm not sure I would do it in this one, though. Okay, so we're looking at this. What do we need? And here I would be looking at my opponent's team. So my opponent, if we look at the overall standings, season stats, let's take a look. Where are they strong? So goals. They're better than us in goals, so we don't want to be dropping a possible goal scorer. They're fairly significantly worse than us in assists on the season, so we could potentially drop somebody like a Johansson that we have. Wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but it's a possibility. It's somebody that we could drop. PIMs, we're a decent chunk ahead of them. We're 40 PIMs ahead of them on the season, which reflects about 25% higher. So we could lose somebody of Reeves or Lucic and probably still win penalty minutes, most likely. Shots, pretty significantly ahead, so we could lose a shooter, but I typically don't like moving shooters because they tend to be good regardless. Power play points were fairly close. Hits were fairly close, but again, actually, where are they? Yeah, we have a pretty good lead on them in hits as well. And then blocks, they're very similar to us in all the way across, actually. But it seems like PIMS is the thing that we could kind of go without the most, and that's what you'll see is you can add guys for PIMS and then stream them back out, and it's not a big deal. So that brings us to Lucic, who's our biggest PIM getter right now, but hasn't really done a lot lately. So he does get PIMs, but his point scoring and all that has kind of gone by the wayside since he was moved off that second line. So he's probably the first player I'm thinking about. Reeves is an option, but Ryan Reeves and the Vegas Golden Knights are playing against San Jose on Thursday. I expect Reeves is going to get something like 17 penalty minutes in this game. You know that he's going to go after Evander Kane. You know the officials are know what's going to happen here. They know there's going to be an explosion. As soon as Reeves starts getting chippy, almost certainly going to fight probably Kane because, Kane seems easy enough to goad. You'd think that Reeves will be able to get that done. Probably pick up an instigator on the way or a roughing. So that's 7 penalty minutes right there. And then if he keeps John off, which is very likely, he'll probably get chucked. So there's a good chance of 15 penalty minutes from him, which probably makes him one of the more valuable players for us. Derick England, good peripheral guy, obviously no points, but he's been scratched a lot. We actually only added him on Sunday as a spot start to shore up our hits, PIMs, and blocks, which worked great, but we don't need him anymore. So he's definitely my first streamer option to get rid of. Calvin DeHaan, we probably don't need him either. So basically Lucic, England, and DeHaan are all guys I would think about streaming out. We have 5 ads for the week. So if I'm looking at players that I want to add, if I want to add somebody for today, I'm just going to kind of let it sort by score and see who's available. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to add anybody right now. Jeff Carter at Arizona is an interesting option. We've got Eller here, so I could take him for the Monday, Wednesday. Dustin Brown would have been good, but we actually had to drop him to make room to make sure that we won last week. So he's on waivers. We can't add him yet. It seems like Henry, Carter, or Eller would be my options, since I think we want goal scoring the most, judging by what the season stats showed us. And this is the research you have to do in a Cats league. In a points league, it just straight up doesn't matter. You just want to look for the best player because it all translates to points anyway. It doesn't matter what what the opponent team's doing. So it's much more detailed, as you can see, in a Cats league. So Carter is probably the best goal scorer of these players available. So Carter would, despite the fact he's playing against Arizona, and that's not the easiest matchup, Carter would be the guy I'm probably going to add first, and then probably Eller to get that Monday, Wednesday, so that I don't blow all my starts or all my ads right off the bat. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. Let's add Jeff Carter in place of Derick England because we know we don't need him. So there we go. Added Carter. And then if we're going to add Eller, let's go ahead and add Eller as well. So we're doing a live here. This is actually what I think I'm going to be doing for this week. Eller. I don't think there's any better options. I know that Vrana's not available. Beyond that, there's just goaltenders and stuff you don't need. Soderberg is an interesting option, but I don't think we need him because he's not a big goal scorer anyway. Connor Garland, you can make an argument for, but I just don't really trust him to be able to keep up what he's been doing lately. Although he is getting more time on ice, so he's an interesting option. But I think I'm going to add Eller because I want to get the 2 starts as opposed to 1. So Eller for Lucic, I think. Yeah, for Lucic. If I had to make another choice, it would be between Pionk and DeHaan, probably. And I think I would keep Pionk, despite the fact that DeHaan has better peripherals. Pionk has the point upside and power play points, which are just tough to come by. So we don't need to make that decision. So it is Lucic that is going. We just don't need him on this roster, really. So there you go. Now we've straight up added 3 starts already to this team. Because we have these 2 starts we were not going to get on Monday in Eller and Carter, and then another one on Wednesday. And we dropped players that were not going to play at all through the entire week. So not a big deal. So you look at Calgary, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we were super busy on those days. He wasn't going to play. You can look at Vegas, same deal, super busy on those days. England's not going to play, and he might have gotten scratched. So we've straight up added 3 starts, which is going to help us immensely. And then going forward on Friday and Sunday, and even Wednesday, we're probably going to stream out Carter on Wednesday because we're not going to get any more starts out of him for somebody maybe on the Rangers or Ottawa, depending who's available on the wire. And then again on Sunday, we'll probably move both these guys out, depending. We may not need anything. We might be looking for the next week at that point and just starting to move ahead. But assuming that we need things, then we'll be looking to continue these streaming options throughout the rest of the week. So that's an example of how you can add starts, straight up add starts. Volume is what matters so much in fantasy hockey and is overlooked in a lot of leagues. That said, it's not all about volume in some leagues. If you have like a cap, like a waiver ad cap, then you have to take that into consideration. You can't just go completely insane adding all the time because you'll run out of ads. Most leagues don't have that, but I have been at a few that do. So be careful with that if you have a maximum. If you have maximum weekly starts, then again, streaming is less valuable and it's just about having the best players. But in most leagues where you have unlimited ads for the season and a weekly cap of probably 4, you should be streaming fairly often. Streaming is also easier to do in leagues like that Fantrax league I was just showing where you can instantly add players. In all of my other leagues, we have free agent acquisition budget, and all the free agents are on waivers, which means you have to add them the next day or even later in some of my leagues. So streaming there gets a little bit harder because you don't know that you're going to get the player you're targeting. But it's still the same concepts apply. So back in this main league, I still have to decide whether I'm willing to give up Leonard. That's the big question, right? Is Leonard, despite how good he is, am I in danger of losing this matchup if I keep Leonard? And if I keep Leonard, am I even helping myself? The big question, what I'd like to do, obviously, is trade Leonard. But that still leaves me a little bit hamstrung for this week because I'll wind up with another player I most likely am not going to want to drop. So this league is going to be just tougher to stream in. I already missed the window of adding a player this week, or for Monday, rather. But let's take a look. I think my opponent added somebody. Dominik Kubalik. Nope, that was yesterday. So nobody's really done a lot of adding this week, which makes sense because there's not a lot of options for this week. But that's kind of the general concept. So in a little bit of a recap here, streamers are always valuable. And in fact, I would argue that typically they're more valuable than like a 60-point player in most leagues. Now, that's not to say drop a 60-point player for a streamer spot. It just means that having a streamer spot is a very, very valuable thing, especially on heavy game nights like this coming week. If you can maximize your additional ads, it's the comparison of let's go back to the data here. Let's look at my team real quick and look at somebody like Stamkos, like a top player. Now, if I were to drop Stamkos, crazy as it sounds, and do what I said before, get Eller, then get somebody on Friday and somebody on Sunday, I would basically, this is kind of a bad example, but let's move over to the Fantrax League, because this works better here where there's a lot more players. Because weirdly enough, I'm not that bad in benches this week, but a lot of your teams are going to be. So let's look at this week, which I do have bad benches. Let's talk about dropping Malkin, right? Let's even assume that Malkin goes point per game or better. Let's say he's going to play 3 games. Let's say he gets 4 points. Now, if I were to drop Malkin here, I would gain a Reeves start on Tuesday. So I lose Malkin. I gain Reeves on Tuesday. Let's see what happens on Thursday. I gain probably Voracek or Bertuzzi, one of these guys that I would probably bench in place of over here. So now I've lost Malkin for Tuesday and Thursday, but I've gained Reeves and Bertuzzi, let's say, for Tuesday and Thursday. And then on Saturday, actually Malkin doesn't play on Saturday, but Friday. This doesn't work either because we want to have a guy that's playing all the off. Well, screw it. Let's just say, okay, fine. He plays Friday, so might not have been the best example for this, but for all intents and purposes, we're not gaining any starts by dropping him here. So we've lost 3 Malkin starts, and so far we've gained a Reeves and a Bertuzzi. Now, with that spot, we could have added Carter on Monday. And then on Wednesday, let's look back at the sheet here, we could add probably Duclair or Eller or Deneau. Let's just go with Duclair. We've talked about him a lot. So now I've got a Carter, a Duclair. Move him again over here. Actually, you know what? Why don't we just keep him? Because these are 2 good matchups. So 2 Duclair starts. And then on Sunday, we'd move him again for maybe a Fabry or somebody from Arizona. Soderberg, possibly, against Tyler Oilers. Let's just say Fabry for funsies, assuming he's still playing top power play at this point. So we've lost 3 Malkin starts, but we've gained Carter, 2 Duclair starts, a Fabry start, a who else? This is getting complicated to keep up with, but a Reeves start and a Bertuzzi start. So we lost 3 Malkin starts, but we wound up with 6 starts coming back. So plus 3 players starting. So we lose Malkin's 4 points, but if we can assume we get half a point per game out of these guys, then we'll get 3 points back, but a ton more peripherals, just because even though they're not great players, they're all going to put up shots and hits at a higher, like just on, even if they only put up 2 shots and Malkin puts up 3, we're getting 6 starts. We're going to get way more shots. We're going to get way more hits. We're going to get way more PIMs. So we might be losing 1 point, and maybe not even that on average, but we'll be gaining tons and tons of peripherals. And in fact, if we did use this, like if I did have Stamkos, for example, the comparison would be even more stark. Because we would lose 3 Stamkos starts, but we would gain 7 total because we'd have to be able to play somebody else on Saturday. So that's how streamers kind of work. Now, again, I'm not suggesting drop somebody like Malkin for a streamer spot. I'm just showing how powerful a streamer spot can be and that they have a ton of weight, especially if you're benching players, because you're going to get a downgraded start, maybe not even a downgraded start. If you're dropping a true streamer option that's like you may have benched anyway, then you're probably not even losing anything, and you're strictly gaining starts. And that's the thing. This in playoffs, this is how you win playoffs. At playoff time, dropping even a crazy player like a Malkin isn't that bad of an option. It just depends on schedule. If somebody like Malkin's only playing 2 games in the last week, and they're on heavy game nights, I would probably drop, maybe not Malkin, but I would probably drop a very high-end player, because at that point, it just doesn't matter. It's all about volume. Just flood your opponent with starts and win by numbers. And that's the big takeaway here. That's how you get value out of streamers and what a streamer spot is. The biggest problem, the biggest thing that you need to be able to do is find your streamers. And that's the homework. Go after this, look at your teams, figure out your streaming options. It doesn't necessarily have to be for this week. And maybe, again, like Duclair on my team, he's almost certainly my streamer option next week. But this week, he's got the off nights, so he's worth hanging on to at least until Friday. I could stream him out on Sunday and then move ahead this weekend. But you want to be isolating your players that are the guys you'd probably bench. Just think about if everybody were starting, who would you bench against? They're all starting against Detroit. Who are you going to bench? And those are going to be your streaming options, even if they sound good. Even if like Tatar, right? Tatar has been great over this last little bit. He's on a 4-game point streak. He's got 7 points in 4 games. But the fact of the matter is he's still probably one of my streaming options. He's got the coach's ire a little bit. He got benched. He's not playing a ton of minutes. A lot of this looks a little bit suspect. So I'd either try to move him or he could be a streaming option despite how good he's playing. And then obviously like your defensemen are typically streaming options. But so that's what you should be doing. Find out who your streamers are. Find out whether you should be streaming this week or next week. You probably should be. And then figure out how to maximize your starts and what you need to do in a Cats League. That's the homework. Thanks for coming to this lecture, I guess. And class dismissed.